You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and we've got a returning guest, a friend of a ton of people in the network, did a fantastic episode a while back and just invited her back, Destaney Wishon from Better Media. And I think before it was Better AMS, and we're going to get into that today because kind of that rebrand, as I was catching up with her, is around a ton of the trends that are going on in the space today. So I'm not going to give much more lead in than that. Destaney, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to give a little background on yourself, and then let's jump into where the trends are going, which I think ties directly to, the journey you're on with the company as a whole.
Yeah, of course. And again, thank you so much for having me on. Always love when it's a fun flowing conversation. So that was one of the best parts of the last podcast. So excited to see what
there's no script. There's literally no script.
That's honestly the worst is when I get a message and it's like, we got to hop on a qualifying call to come up with the script. I'm like, man, I'm going to be terrible on script. Just let me flow.
I love it. No, our qualifying call is I've got 20 people that say, Destaney is awesome. You should have her on the podcast. That's qualification. All right, jump on. And we're just going to have a fun conversation.
Well, I'm glad we had some trust there. I'm glad you have some trusted advisors sending over referrals, but that's what happens when you've been in the space for so long. I think a lot of what we talked about last time was my history in Amazon advertising. And for those who haven't heard that podcast, I've pretty much been doing this for almost 7 years, which I would say is a long time. I mean, like 22-year-old me versus now, a lot has changed. A lot has changed in the industry and a lot has changed with the company. I think when we initially started, we were Better AMS, and AMS was Amazon Marketing Services. So we are really rooted in strictly PPC. Back in those days, it was keyword research and bid management, and that's all that mattered. And nowadays, we've really embraced like what the future of the industry looks like. So I think pay-per-click, for one, is going to be changing a ton, whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Amazon. And a lot of that is due to granularity and creativity. I think AI is starting to play a much larger role. So we decided, hey, we're no longer just solely an AMS company. People need to diversify, brands need to diversify and be really reactive and flexible. We want to be a media company. So that's where kind of the fundamental rebrand, Better Media, comes up. Like at its simplest, it's just us expanding into more focus around programmatic, DSP, and Instacart, Walmart, all the external platforms. But I think the principles behind it are the change in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, and you say AMS, for all of us old school people, like it was AMS. If you say that to somebody who's just jumping in right now, like, what do you mean AM? What do you mean AMS? It was all PPC. It was easier. It was cheaper.
Much
really
easier.
Effective. Like I remember never spending my budget.
Yeah.
Right? Like
17-cent bids, and you could just cast the most wide net, and it was going to be profitable.
Right. And then it didn't. I just kept upping the budgets, and it literally like I would rarely hit it, and then I would after right now you set a budget of $5,000 in a week, you blow through it in a day. I'd set that. I would run through it for multiple weeks. Yep. And still, I mean, we got to like 9 number one bestsellers. Like we're just crushing it with printing money. Now, the AMG side was a different story back in the day.
AMG, Amazon Media Group. I remember the first time I was thrown onto an AMG call, and it was with the number one product on Amazon at the time. And I got thrown into AMG. And of course, I'm coming from a private label background of, hey, every nickel matters. Like you got to have a great call. And AMG opens up with something along the lines of, we want to spend $70,000 on display. And, they have the exact same template still to this day that they did when it was Amazon Media Group 6 years ago. And they were like, well, we're going to serve 500 million impressions or something. And I said, okay, I remember asking, what is the ACoS on that? And they're like, oh, we don't track that.
Yeah, we don't track that.
And I was like, huh. well, I don't think we should do this. But of course, that was my own bias coming from a private label background, but that's general media. That's the direction Amazon's moving into, right? Amazon can only slip so many placements into search. So Amazon's becoming a media company. They're having all these crazy buys. They're having the prime, advertising rollouts, and so are we.
Give me the private label background. I mean, I was at Perigo. We were private label OTC pharma, infant formula. I didn't know if we ever had this chat, but it's funny. The same thing. I had the exact same reaction. And then even when I did the first couple campaigns, which ended up running 200,000, right? Because I think it was like 70,000 a month. So, I had like a 0.12 ROAS. I was getting.
But you served impressions.
I served impressions. Yes, right. But I had to ask for like money back. I'm like this, and then they said, no. The halo effect on the brand is going to be huge. I'm like, the brand's only really sold on Amazon because it's private label. Like, I don't get it.
Like, nobody knows this brand name. And then, back then they didn't give you branded search metrics. You didn't have AMC where you could actually attribute your streaming TV and your sponsored product overlay.
Yeah.
And now we have all of that, and it's almost too much. Like, I still talk to so many brands that are dealing with the same misconceptions we dealt with then, right? It's been 7 years and we're still having to unpack a lot of that. But in reality, Amazon's given us a lot of the tools, but so quickly. So much has changed so fast. Like, I audit brands who are asking me about AMC, and I hop in and they don't even know what a sponsored brand ad is, right?
Yeah. What's interesting is we were just doing a dinner out at E-Tail, and one of the things that came up was, the educational aspect of digital across even upper management, but kind of even what you're saying is there's some digital leaders have been put into an executive position because they knew, digital 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the rate of change over the past 24 months, it's crazy to think that like people that were in it and were leaders 4 years ago are now sitting on the outside, only knowing a fringe of the total capabilities that's available. And the next phase is as AI hits, it's going to go even faster.
Yeah.
And
it's a true change to how society functions, in my opinion. I truly believe that. And I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's going to change how companies are forced to operate. And I think there's so many difficulties that people haven't quite accepted that's going to come. And e-commerce is just going to ripple down to every other side of the industry. You can't have one department functioning, 180-degree difference than the rest of your departments. E-commerce is going to influence the rest of them.
Yeah, I take it all back. I call it the TikTok effect.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok changed. Now it's changing how people completely shop. You can do it on the platform, but this idea that people want to be entertained in, 5 to 25-second clips. They don't want to read anymore, even reviews. And then it's pushing its way into training internally, where companies are having to embrace that you can't send out the training like catalog, the hey, read this. That's not happening.
Every 3 years.
They're doing TikToks to train. Right. Yeah. Because people, they discover on the platform now, like they used to go to Google or YouTube and say, hey, change a tire. Now people put it on TikTok. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Everything moves so quick. And, to your point, it's something I've definitely struggled with as an entrepreneur. My whole brand was built on my personal Amazon advertising expertise and education. Right. And there's a level of that I never want to walk away from. Like, I'm passionate about the industry in itself. But I got to split my time between also growing as an entrepreneur and a leader while trying not to lose touch of every single update that's being rolled out. And it's a hard balance. Thankfully, we've hired an incredible team, which has really assisted in funneling things to me that are important. But I struggle. Like, I feel like I'm never catching up. And obviously, when you're on LinkedIn and social, you're just in a mirror of everyone else who's an expert in the space. And it never feels like enough.
That I think anybody listening to this, it's an entrepreneur, even people who are leaders in their company are thinking the exact same thing. Yeah. Like, and all I do is talk to leaders all day, every day in the space. And it's like, I always feel like I'm behind.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think we're way far behind. I don't know. I mean, there's obviously probably a few people out there, but it is a struggle, I think, for everybody right now is how do you keep up? And I think part of it, I don't want to lose that, like, hey, I have to constantly be learning because I want to stay on top of my game. But then, being able to have some kind of peace about the fact that I'm never going to know it all, obviously, and that I've just got to surround myself with the right team and the right people to kind of, like you're saying, keep you informed.
Yeah.
But you're on, I mean, yeah, on LinkedIn. I mean, I love LinkedIn because there's so much cool things. And I sometimes that's my rabbit hole. I'm not on other social media. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
LinkedIn's totally my rabbit hole.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, I got super lucky. I feel like I started building my brand really early on just because I was too intimidated to build it anywhere else. I wasn't going to go to YouTube or Instagram. And I was like, yeah, I'll post on LinkedIn. I have no followers there. And then I kept posting and it kind of took off and ended up being fantastic for us. And I think I'm like 500 followers away from 40,000, which is cool. But we'll serve around, I think, 5 million impressions as a team on LinkedIn through content. So it's kind of cool to just be like, hey, we're affecting people. We're training.
Yeah. So you're one of the people I follow. I don't follow a ton. You're one, and you put out awesome content, and totally appreciate that for sure. So, and I know it's hard work. Like I try to post as much as I can. I just don't. It's hard. It's hard work to put out good content. Who do you follow on LinkedIn? Who are other people that are out there? I like Todd Hassenfeld. That guy is awesome. We've had him on a bunch of times. He's one of my favorite people in the space. I like key people that stick out. I love Rick Watson. I bring a lot of them on the podcast, right? The people I follow, you like I stalked him for a while, and then I'm like, hey.
I do similar. I also follow a lot of brands because I think brands give a unique experience. So a lot of different leaders from certain brands. Melissa Burdick, of course, is pretty good with like high level industry updates. Mike Black, Profits Hero, used to post a ton. I think he's slowed down a little bit.
Oh, we just had him on like 2 or 3 episodes ago. Yeah.
Really?
Mike's an old friend. Yeah.
The Profit or the Pattern team, I think, does a really good job of educating. And I think those are probably the key ones. I always try to incorporate other content like into our content as well. Because like you said, I can only come up with so much unique content. I've been doing this for 7 years. I've posted thousands of different content pieces, and I get imposter syndrome when I repeat content. I'm the worst about restructuring content. So I'm trying to build my network to bring in other experts, right? I think it's a good way. We went back to, growing as an entrepreneur, but also growing as an expert in the space. And something I found helpful is podcasting. So I typically do a lot of brand side interviews on our podcast. We've brought on.
What is your podcast? People want to know.
Yeah, better advertising with better media. Name change. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Everybody check it out.
Yeah, 100%. I brought on like Sean Riley from Dude Wipes, and we had an amazing conversation around like guerrilla marketing and being lean in the beginning. And I've brought on like Nestle executives, and that's super cool because it gives me an opportunity to learn while also producing content. So that's a direction I'm trying to go with my network. Instead of just relying on me, it's like, okay, I've built this following. I'm now better media. So it's like, how do I turn that into like a news source, right? A trusted news source where I bring people on, not just for following and engagement. Like, I think that's what a lot of people do and it dilutes their network. How do I bring on key people that are going to add value to my network that I can no longer add because I'm focusing more on being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's awesome. I should start bringing, I don't do a ton of brands. Because usually I'm just asking, a lot of my job is just, connecting. People have issues or pain points. So I'm pulling the network always. Okay, what are the biggest pain points? What are you trying to solve for? And then who's the best around? And who's helping you solve those? And then I'm usually, I'm gathering all these questions from brands, and then I'll bring, you come up a ton. All right, jump on. And we're not totally going down any of the media. We get to that discussion as well. But, it's kind of that, hey, I can just, then kind of ask real time. And then as brands listen in, they're getting the questions asked, but they don't have to join one of our webinars or a dinner. Love it when brands do that, but then they can kind of consume on their own.
100%.
I think it would be cool to bring on some brands. I should start mixing a bunch of those in.
They have unique perspectives. I think Sometimes you lose like the quality of just an amazing speaker. Like, yeah, I'm going to be good at podcasts. This is all I do with my time. Like I'm on a pod like 3 a week. So I think, like you mentioned earlier, when you're on a panel or you're on a podcast, so much about it is just being a good host and asking the right questions. And that's what I love is I get a really unique perspective when I bring a brand on. You know, when I talked with Wishon, I'm like, how did you disrupt this category? And other brands want to hear that versus like an agency can't answer that. An agency gives you kind of a broader perspective on a specific niche, I feel like, or an industry expert. But a brand owner really brings some creativity to the table. And we've had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. I think you just changed the course of the Digital Deep Dive podcast. No, I love it. It's funny because when we're doing events like a dinner, like we were chatting a little bit before, I'm usually moderating. It's funny because in those, yeah, I'm usually asking the brands around the table, hey, what's the one thing you want to get out of the dinner? And then I'm pulling those questions and pulling them out and having that interaction. And then obviously we have somebody there, it's a resident expert that's answering. Why we should probably do that. Probably do that on the podcast too. So
Yeah.
All the listeners ready for a bunch of brands to show up as well.
Send over referrals.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I mean, I was just one of the things I was add detail, which I was saying is, some of the panel discussions, it's all about who's asking the questions, and some of the panels were very, very painful. But you have this crazy talent that's up there, like you're saying, from a brand that's just blown up a business.
Yes.
And if they're not being asked the right questions, it's just painful to sit through, right?
100%.
So, anyways, what's going on with the paid media as a whole? Maybe we should get there. Maybe not. It doesn't matter to me.
We'll see where the conversation goes, whatever happens.
Wait, really quick, you do 3 of these a week?
Yeah, typically between webinars and podcasts.
Ah, it's awesome. That's cool.
It's fun. I really enjoy this format of content.
Yeah, you seem completely uncomfortable. Completely uncomfortable. I do love it when you jump on and it's just basically I don't need a script. Let's just roll.
Let's just go with it. It's fun because I think everyone has a unique audience. So yesterday I talked about international expansion, but from the perspective of going from Europe to US and what to expect there. And everyone's audience brings a unique view. And something I struggle with written content or LinkedIn content is it's almost too broad, I feel like. And I'm a big believer, especially in e-commerce, that there's no one size fits all solution. Don't ask me what the average ROAS is. Don't ask me to forecast your sales. It's so dependent on every individual brand. And I think that's what's fun about this style of chat is your audience best. I can provide a more custom answer to your audience. Same thing with webinars or live fireside chats or Q&As. It's that ability to connect and actually provide a solution that's a lot less scalable, but a lot more customized. And I think, going back to your original question of what am I seeing in the space? And it's more of that is needed. I think more than ever before, driven by the innovation across all of the different platforms, TikTok Shop, Amazon, their development team, you need a customized strategy specifically for you. There's really no playbook for success for D2C or brand building in general. It is changing quick. I think on the Amazon advertising side, which is probably where I have the deepest set of knowledge, it's insane the things that we have access to, whether it's AMC, whether it's the changes they're making on the DSP side and what we have access to there. I mean, they just opened up Amazon Prime to being able to serve ads. And that's insane because it's no minimums, no commitments. You can serve an ad directly on Prime. And it's think about the OG days 20 to 30 years ago. That was insanely powerful to see your product on the TV. Now we have the ability to do that with audience insights, with feedback and data. And I think those things are really cool.
That's great. So there's no minimums. I mean, but that's crazy. Because the targeting that you can get to.
Yeah. It's still broad, I would say. And I think Amazon made it broad initially in the beginning. And as they have more people adopting it, they're going to allow us to be a lot more granular. But on just streaming in general, you can go into advertising console. You don't even need DSP and you can launch a sponsored TV campaign. Now there's a barrier to entry, I think, with commercial grade creatives, of course, but for $5, I don't know if it'd get you any impressions. you can create a sponsored TV campaign. Like that's absolutely insane. And I think it's going to unlock a lot of opportunity for a lot of mid-sized brands who have never been able to compete with the minimums of a Johnson & Johnson or a Procter & Gamble.
It's especially if they're going to be able to grab those spots faster, right? We see those big behemoths that takes them a while to adopt something new. And that's
typically takes 3 months to get a budget approved because you're usually doing quarterly planning at QBRs. And then you typically have to get marketing and legal approved from a creative department perspective. And you're spot on. Mid-sized brands typically have a competitive advantage. They have just enough marketing budget to get the creative done, but they move so much quicker.
It's going to be a fun. I mean, you think then maybe a year from now, if they can if they can, they have the capabilities to go super granular. But a lot of what we're seeing right now is, I think it was coming out of CES, right? That I think Amazon had made that announcement you could take your direct consumer data and load it in, and then you could retarget and you could actually carve them out.
Yeah.
But if you can take that into a demographic and plug it in, and then it be very, very specific, right? It was why DSP was actually quite cheap for a long time, is there's so much inventory at a granular level.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, searching on, mug, but not as many people saying best dad mug for Father's Day, right?
But
and then starting the
ranges of yeah, exactly.
Which is it's going to be awesome.
It is. And I think that's where we're at this like pivotal point where the large brands don't typically make media buys in that way, right? The large brands typically do say, hey, we're going to set aside $300,000. We do need audience insights, but the return isn't as important for us, right? It is about impressions and viewability. Small brands can't quite serve a large enough audience to make DSP or programmatic more beneficial. But these mid-sized brands are really poised. Like, in my opinion, that is why the Sean Rileys and the Dude Wipes and the Liquid Deaths did so well. They were able to combine the commercial grade creatives of a Procter & Gamble, of a Johnson & Johnson, but they had to be scrappy and lean with their media buys. So they were able to unlock the power of insane granularity that we have. Like, the audience targeting we have is insane, and that is powerful.
I mean, those aren't innovative products.
Yeah.
They're innovative ways of marketing products.
Yes.
And they totally crushed it, right?
They crushed it. They drove so much creativity and innovation. It's like, we have a little bit budget. How do we make it go as far as possible? And they got insanely precise with their targeting.
And they're fun brands. They take
risks.
Yeah, right. Oh, what was the other one? Dollar Shave Club, like those old videos, right? Those old commercials. Like, you take something that's a product that's just boring and you use marketing and paid media to make it fun and exciting. And people are like, yeah, I just love to buy this product because it's awesome.
Run the risk of getting canceled and it pays off.
Yeah, I've got you're changing my whole podcast right here. Well, not all of it, but half of it we have to bring just brands on.
Dabble. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, are you seeing a big shift in like paid media dollars that's happening right now? Amazon, keeps gobbling up more and more, and I think Walmart will figure it out at some point in time. I think they're slowly figuring it out. I don't know what's taking them so long. I mean, Amazon gave them the playbook for exactly what to build and how to build it, and they, for some reason, want to build something different. But are you seeing a big shift in where money's flowing to?
I would say slowly but surely. I think fundamentally we're seeing a little bit of a shift away from search into more upper funnel. And I think that's because Amazon has done a much better job of giving us data. I think AMC has helped a ton with that. It's helped justify what upper funnel looks like. I've said it before, and sponsored products spoiled everyone. Like we were just talking about, it was a slot machine. It was 100% hit rate on a slot machine. Like you made so much money, you put money in and you get so much more money out. And that spoiled a lot of people. And as Amazon's embraced this vision of becoming a media behemoth and playing with all the big players, they're pulled back by that sponsored ad performance, right? People still have that misconception. I think that's where we're going to see a shift in media dollars as Amazon starts having more owned and operated inventory and does a better job of reporting on that and allows for lower minimums on some of their larger display campaigns. I think we're going to see a pretty large shift because Amazon is just owning so much and doing such a good job as we start talking about a cookieless world. I do think Walmart is going to make a big play. I think I hate to say too big to fail, but I'm from Bentonville. Like Walmart has every vendor relation you could possibly have. They have all of the key players to make it happen. And we're seeing a really large shift of employees that were, last 10 years at Amazon being hired at Walmart and loving the Walmart culture. So I think that'll play a really big role as well in kind of that future development.
Man, if they can figure out that brands want to partner.
Yeah.
As soon as they figure that out, that I really want to be an all-in partner with brands on digital growth, it's going to explode. Because
I think that's their competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Amazon's never partnered well. Amazon's SOP'd everything. I think in that book, that the Amazon Way, maybe that book talks about the concept of OPW and like other people's work. And Amazon likes to take things and make them other people's work. So whether it's advertising or set up your listings, they were like, how do we outsource this to the brands? Where Walmart, in my opinion, has always taken a different approach. And again, I'm probably pretty biased living there. But Walmart's like handshake deals, fly into the home office, get a demo, like it is friendship based. And I think that's where they have an advantage is brands have such a strong relationship to Walmart. Like my dad's always worked on vendor side. And it's so funny hearing his stories about like what brands will concede for Walmart. Cause like Walmart has all of the chess pieces. Like Amazon's not like that, in my opinion. Amazon, there's still a high friction environment. People see Amazon and they're like, but people hear about Walmart and they're like, yeah, we'll do everything for them because we have a 10-year relationship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a partnership, right? With Amazon, it feels like they've just been taking. And including to the point of taking advantage of these large corporations early on to their own benefit, where, you have the marketing allowance. And I remember like the first conversation. So we just got an Amazon up and rolling, right? I like literally cold called them and finally got to somebody who previously had worked at Cardinal Health and was there and all of a sudden saw the potential, and we get it lined up. And then they start looking at the marketing co-op, and traditionally you get something for that. And they're like, what do we get for this? I'm like, nothing. You literally get nothing. They're like, oh, well, it's maintaining the pages, or your marketing co-op just goes in their pocket.
Yes.
But they thought brands still think that we're going to get something back for this, and you're not. In every other relationship, including a Walmart, when you're dealing with a retailer and you put that marketing co-op in place, you work together on how you're going to spend it to drive, a better outcome, more sales for both.
Beneficial outcome. Yeah.
And Amazon, it's not.
And that's why Amazon scaled, especially on the third party side, is because they made it seamless for everyone else to get up on the platform and grow. But we're also seeing a shift where I think Amazon's realized who's driving the most volume, who's driving the most Amazon advertising budget, and it's the brands that made Walmart successful. So like, I know it's kind of a big argument of like what made Amazon successful was the diversity in their products and the third-party marketplace. But Amazon needed that diversity to get ahead of Walmart. And now they're like, okay, we are ahead because of all of the vendors, brands that have now moved over. Maybe we need to shift focus. I mean, that's why search is so saturated. The top 10 products are the products that are probably the same ones in store as Walmart. There's really not much of a competitive advantage other than 24-hour shipping.
Yeah. If Amazon, on the other hand, goes all in, especially on the marketing side, with sharing, attribution data and what's actually happening, because they have it all.
Yeah.
If they open up that playbook and share it, their ad revenue will double or triple. Like it'll be ridiculous because of what they can share. They're just not, because they never have, right? They don't like to share data.
Yeah.
But if they do, it could be a game changer. There's a company, Amped. I don't know if you've talked to them. They're kind of a connection point because Amazon was seeing that they wanted dollars were going away. Anybody that was spending money on paid search or social was driving it to the direct consumer site.
Yep.
Well, how do you get some of those ad dollars to drive it to Amazon? Okay, well, we're going to boost overall search ranking output higher if it comes from off Amazon. If you're driving tons of traffic to a detail page from off Amazon, it'll rise in search faster than internal Amazon paid media. But then you weren't getting any, they were like, hey, well, this is great. People throw more money in, but they weren't. And they're trying to figure out, well, why aren't people spending more money? They didn't have any attribution data.
Yep.
Well, now, I mean, they're using this.
It. Yeah.
Now you can get it. And now money's flowing back in.
Yep. And it's like the same thing with Amazon Marketing Cloud. You know, we're finally able to overlay all of our ad type performance with our organic performance. And they had to because it got so much more competitive. And I think that's where, like, from a principal's perspective, I think brands, you know, Amazon wants us to spend more money. They're just trying to get us to spend more money. I'm like, no, that's not quite it. Yes, they do want you to spend more money. But if all of these brands were spending money and not seeing a return, they would shift their budgets. And like, that's the secondary piece that people are missing. Yes, Amazon wants you to spend more money, but they have to drive a return if they want a long-term successful advertising revenue. So they're giving us more data to justify it. They're giving us like all of these insights to say, hey, when you spend more money, you do in fact get a return. Yes, the market's a lot more competitive, but we're finally unlocking these insights to prove to you that you need to spend more money. And I think that's just going to be more beneficial for us.
Yeah. And they know if they don't, Walmart will at some point in time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest competitor still. Yeah. I mean, what's really weird is, you know, Jeff Bezos, you know, with that old interview where they ask him, you know, how long Amazon will be around. He's like, I don't know, you know, most companies only last, I don't know if it was like 20 or 30 years. We're at like the 25-year mark.
Yep. Yep.
As you're scratching your head, like, how did he set this up?
Yes. Like what is next? What should we be expecting here? I got a lot of my career invested in Amazon being successful. So
but you have, I mean, Walmart, they're here.
Walmart's here. I'm excited. I think it's fun. I think diversity is important for all the brands. And again, that's what makes it so complex is there's no perfect playbook. But having the opportunity to really add diversification to your portfolio is going to be beneficial if people can figure out the balance between being niche and being really good at a few things and not diluting themselves across a ton of different markets and channels. It's a fine line.
It is. It's funny. It's also a fine line, even in the agency space, right?
Yes.
Like the I would say just above boutique, those shops, I mean, that are really, really, really focused. You see Omni Partners acquired, Orga Pacific acquired, Flywheel obviously acquired. Like when they roll up into these larger organizations, sometimes the boutiqueness wears off. All of a sudden you're beholden to, earnings, quarterly reports. You have to, I don't know, it gets more complicated, a little bit muddier. It'll be interesting to see with Flywheel as a whole.
100%. I mean, retaining talent in general in our space is pretty complex. There's a premium on the knowledge that we have. You either pay people really well and have no margin, or you try to outsource and you dilute your quality of service. Like there's a reason agencies are hard to scale. Like I can confidently say I have slowed our revenue growth a ton just by trying to be a little bit more strategic, a little bit more premium, and not just saying yes to everyone. It's not easy. Like I decided I didn't want to spread my team too thin and churn talent really quickly and outsource.
Right. That was John Giorso over at Orca Pacific. They're now Media Monk's longtime friend. And that was a lot of the conversations I had with him along the way as he was growing. Because I kicked this off almost 7 years ago, and he's been a friend since, I don't know, probably a year and a half before that. But in just conversations as he was growing was around, you have to say no to some people, right? You can't run a business with accounts at zero margin. You can't do it. You can do it for a month. You mess up and say, hey, sorry, I'm going to throw 5 people at this and we're going to get it fixed. But you can't just sign people just to sign people.
Yeah. I had a fantastic call with him a few weeks ago, actually. And we chatted similar. I was talking to him about how he built his like sales team back then. And he was so insightful and like very grateful for this community because there are so many people in similar positions that have reached out and helped. But we ran into the same thing. I had someone go on LinkedIn and make a not very kind comment about us because we turned them down and went and audit their business because they weren't a good fit for us. And it's so difficult. I mean,
especially when you're a nice person and you just
that was the part that kind of hurt. I was like, man, I for the longest time, and even still, I've take so many calls and like try to assist and try to make it as scalable as possible. But you can't. Like I had to hit this point where I was like, I can't.
You're running a business. You're growing a business. Yeah, it's tough. But yeah, I'm a people person. I love to help people out. And so it's tough, especially when people view it that way.
Yeah.
Right? You're genuinely a good person. Everybody that meets you thinks you're fantastic. And so,
it's interesting. We don't need to dive into like another societal concept here, but I think social media causes perception that everyone's accessible.
yeah.
Because I answer everything on social. I try to answer with looms or comments or YouTube videos, things like that. So I think it almost causes this like people expect responses and you to take care of them. And that's kind of an interesting thing as well. Like I can't imagine 30 years ago, someone coming up to the CEO of a company and being like, you need to help me.
Yeah.
But like social, they do. You are more accessible for a time being.
I answer emails and I carve everything else out. I mean, I will get to LinkedIn because I do value content that's there. I do get to LinkedIn. I answer emails.
I struggle with email. Email's like my weakness.
Yeah. Mine is just texting. I get a lot of texts, and it's just hard because if you get texts from 50 people a day, you naturally can't get to them all and still run a business. But then all of a sudden they're pushed way down and you're like scrolling to try to catch back up. I try to get to it. It's just not my number one priority. It's email first because that's the easiest because I'm sitting in front of my computer moderating. But
phone calls are another one I struggle with. This is a big generational gap though. I've realized like the generation is just like 10 years older than me. It's like, let's just hop on a call.
Yes.
Like, absolutely not. I am not. Send me a voice memo.
Me.
I am not.
Page me now. Call
if you put it on my calendar at the exact same time, I will 100%. I have 20 minutes to prepare. I know what I'm getting into. If you call me, I don't know what you're calling me about. And it overwhelms me and I'm anxious. And I'm like, no, if you send me a text, say, hey, can we chat about this? And then call me. Yeah, we're good. But my mind immediately goes to like, something's wrong. Oh my gosh, this is traumatic. And I don't answer.
Well, no, if I ever just randomly call you, it's always good. It's always good.
I'll keep that in mind. I may answer the next one.
I'm totally a caller. When something pops into my head, I don't want to type it out. Yeah. I cannot wait for the time where everything is just conversational. I don't have to type in a Google search. I was just rewatching that movie, Her. Have you seen Her with Joaquin Phoenix? You have to watch it. It is awesome. So it's an operating system and it goes off you just put in your earbud and it's completely conversational. Anyways, that's where this whole thing is going. Now in it, he actually develops, he like falls in love with his operating system and Milwaukee is awesome. It's a fantastic movie, but that's where we're going. What's that?
I was going to say one quick thing. When that movie came out, I remember being like, this is so weird. Like the whole concept of it. Cause it was a while ago, right? Like 5-6 years ago.
At least. Yeah. Yeah.
And now retelling the concept of it, it's like a lot less crazy. Like we've had that many developments in AI and things like that. I'm like,
I totally didn't watch it when it first came out, but somebody was like, hey, you should later on because you live in this space. And over the past, I had to rewatch it because, a couple of years ago, it's like, oh, I can see it. Now you're like, I totally see it.
That's funny. Makes sense.
I've been picking your brain. Any questions for me? Like, this has been fantastic. These are my favorite type of podcasts. It's just no necessarily topic. We got into a little bit around paid media on Amazon, but the other stuff, but I don't know. Is there any questions you have for me?
You talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of experts in the space. Are there any like key things that you've identified as a pattern between all of them that's made them successful or able to survive in our space?
Yes. And it's actually just an old thing. And it reminded me when it was they were talking to Tom Hanks and, it's an old saying though, he brought it up just as I was kicking it off, and this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have amazing days. What people don't realize in entrepreneurship as they get into it is you're going to have super highs and super lows. And the highs you think at first, like, oh, we're on a rocket ship. It's going to be forever. This too shall pass. And then you're way down at the bottom. And you're like, hey, we just lost a bunch of clients. I don't know how we're going to make it turn. And it's that realization that if you have that's your passion, and if it's fulfilling you, in most cases it works. It just does, because it's what you love to do, and people pick up on that. And it's this highs and lows that over time, just know you're not here. And those are questions I even had with my wife, was like, it's not going to be here forever, up and down. Over time, as you go, you still have highs and lows, but it gets more evened out.
You get comfortable with the highs and the lows because you have them so many times.
And then they're not actually so high anymore, right? Because it is fantastic, but you realize it's like, I need this. I need to get here. And the people who can realize that, and they don't go bonkers, right? Oh, I just signed 3 people. I'm going to go celebrate and spend a bunch of the company's cash. You've got to put that cash aside. And then when you're low, like, it's going to turn around. It is. I guess perseverance is that number one thing. But the other thing is, like, you have to just roll off. Everybody looks at the end and they're like, oh, you're so lucky. And I'm like, 80 hours a week for the first 3.5, 4 years. But nobody sees that. Do you know what I mean? They see the day to day. They think that it's awesome. And don't get me wrong. I love what I do. There's nothing I would rather be doing. I go to a hobby every day. Yeah. I mean, I do. The worst part about my job is travel, but I'm traveling to have conversations with digital leaders across the US. It's like, really, it's not bad, but I hate jumping on planes. But it's getting through that thing that people are going to think, they are going to assume what you did, you just lucky and you fell into it. And you just have to smile at them. You're not ever going to justify to them that, that this was a lot of time, effort. And that's the other thing is, it's just every entrepreneur that I know just totally works their ass off, and they love the people they're interacting with. They love their job. They love what they're doing. And that's their biggest passion. It's another one of their kids, and they're going to care for it no matter what. And it's just that much passion about what they're doing.
You don't really realize, at least for me, I can't tell you when that switch happened, when it became a lifestyle. I enjoyed Amazon advertising. And then at some point, like, there's a switch where this is what I think about every night before going to sleep. It's the first thing I think about in the morning. And like, it is my passion. Like, I love it. And it's interesting. Like, you think a lot about like the dynamics of like what qualifies someone as an entrepreneur or a CEO, what's the differentiating factor of an employee and things like that. I don't think people realize that mental weight and the mental energy, like you mentioned. The highs are high, the lows are lows, but you never walk away from either. Like, they're there and they're weighing on you constantly. This like overrides everything.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's interesting. I think of it literally as another. So I've got 4 kids. I'm mid 40s now. It's that this is one of those that I'm just totally passionate about. I think about how it's affecting. And the other thing is like, it doesn't go away. It's like, I mean, my oldest is 17, almost 18. He's going off to college next year. And I realize, like, I'll never stop worrying about him. Never. And he's a fantastic kid, wicked smart. He's just awesome. Right. I mean, I'm biased because he's mine, but he's an amazing kid. And my wife quit, being an engineer for big automotive to homeschool all of them. And she's literal genius, like favorite person in the world. So they got a great teacher. Awesome. But I'm never going to stop worrying about him. Never. Yeah. And that's where, like you're saying, like what weighs on you is like things about this business as a whole, right? Am I serving the right people? Am I interacting with the right people? Are we delivering the right content? Are we staying at the cutting edge? Do people value what we're doing? And, just like when people, like praise my kids, right? Like, hey, they're so nice. So when people say at an event, this just happened. We had 3 people say this over out of detail. This is the best networking dinner I've ever been to. Yes, let's go. I'm totally pumped. And then also, I mean, I don't know if you get here too. Sometimes I get like defensive of it. Like, hey, listen, this is the family. People want to come in and criticize me. Yeah. That's fine. Don't criticize the people on my team. Don't do that.
100%. 100%.
Oh, anyways, that was it. We're going to have to do this more often. Holy audits. Because this is super funny. Because this is like what I would say this is usually this is like a conversation that I have with people or we've had, but just not hit record on it.
Yeah.
Right. Where I'm talking with a bunch of entrepreneurs and because I've been through it, I also help them grow. I mean, this platform is, to connect, people who have issues and problems, brands, start up the Fortune 100 with the people who can solve it. And I talk to the brands to say, hey, who actually works and who doesn't. But a lot of times, these conversations get, separated. And this has been super fun. Anyway, we have to do this more often. Anything else top of mind for you? I know we also have to wrap it up here in the next couple minutes. Anything else top of mind for you?
Nothing too top of mind. I feel like we covered everything that matters the most to me.
I'm going to turn this around. We're going to put it next in the queue. It's going to come out next Thursday. That's what we're going to do because this has been awesome.
Cannot wait.
Well, my friend, keep crushing it. Everybody, Destaney Wishon from Better Media. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.
Thank you.